The parking lot outside the courthouse was baking under the midday sun when it started. I had just finished a meeting with my lawyer and was walking toward my car with Titan beside me, my Belgian Malinois, service vest on, alert as ever. I'd learned to trust his instincts even more than my own. After everything we'd been through overseas, that dog wasn't just a partner. He was the reason I came back in one piece. We passed a patrol car idling in the red zone. A young officer in mirrored sunglasses leaned out and barked, "Ma'am, you can't have a dog here. That's courthouse property." I held up Titan's credentials. "He's registered. Service dog, combat trained. We're allowed." The officer didn't even glance at the ID. He looked me up and down, my worn tactical boots, the army patch still stitched onto my sleeve, and smirked. "Right. And I'm the mayor." Titan's ears twitched. I said, "Move along, or I'll have to ask you more formally." I could feel a burn in my chest, not from anger, but from that familiar cold frustration. The one you get when someone decides who you are before you speak a single word. Titan growled softly. He never did that without a reason. "Sir," I said calmly, "I don't think you understand who I am. And you definitely don't understand who he is." The officer stepped out of the car, hand near his belt. "I understand enough. You're holding up traffic. Let's keep it moving, all right?" I didn't flinch. Neither did Titan. And neither of us was going anywhere. Not yet. I stood still, keeping my posture firm, calm, practiced. I'd dealt with far worse under fire. But there was something about being challenged on home soil that cut deeper. Titan remained at my side, his body rigid, focused. His training from Afghanistan kicked in before mine did. He was scanning the officer's body language, reading tension, pressure, signals. "I'm not trying to cause trouble," I said, voice steady. "But you're about to make a mistake." The officer huffed. "Lady, the only mistake is you thinking you can walk around with a war dog like you're in some kind of action movie." Titan's head snapped toward him at that word, war dog. He knew it. It was part of his command vocabulary. "He's not for show," I replied. "He served 2 tours. He's got more discipline than half the people in that building." "You saying I'm undisciplined?" The officer took a step closer, now just a few feet away. I held up a single finger, not at him, but toward Titan. "No. I'm saying he's trained to detect threats. And he just marked you." That made the officer freeze. I reached into my jacket and slowly pulled out a folded document. His papers. My discharge record. And a citation for valor that says both our names. He didn't take it. Instead, he leaned slightly to peer over my shoulder at Titan. "Still looks like just a dog to me." I looked him square in the eye. "That dog saved 6 men from a burning convoy in Kandahar. And you're standing in front of one of them." Something flickered in the officer's face, hesitation, maybe doubt. And then the courthouse doors opened behind us. 3 people stepped out. One of them stopped cold the moment he saw Titan. He whispered, "Is that Sergeant Titan?" The moment was about to shift, and the officer knew it. The man who'd just spoken was in a tailored suit, silver hair tucked neatly behind his ears. But the way he looked at Titan, like someone recognizing a ghost, told me everything I needed to know. He stepped forward slowly, eyes never leaving the dog. "Sergeant Titan." "I didn't think I'd ever see him again," he said, voice hushed with something like reverence. The officer beside me blinked. "You know this, dog?" The suited man gave him a look. "Dog?" "That dog pulled me out of a wrecked Humvee after our convoy was ambushed in Helmand. He stayed by my side until the medevac arrived. Even after I flatlined twice, that dog never left." The officer looked from him to me, suddenly less sure of himself. I kept my gaze on the man. "Captain Reyes, right?" He nodded slowly, then his face lit up. Private Maddox? No, Sergeant Maddox now, isn't it? I allowed a faint smile. Retired, but yeah. You remembered. I never forgot, he said, glancing down at Titan with quiet admiration. No one in Echo Squad could forget you too. The officer shuffled uneasily beside us. I didn't realize. Captain Reyes turned his attention to him, tone shifting. You dismissed a decorated veteran and a war canine without even checking credentials. I thought, she didn't look, the officer fumbled. You thought wrong, Reyes snapped. You judged a soldier by her skin and a service animal by his leash. I gently rested a hand on Titan's back, grounding us both. Reyes looked at me again. Come with me. You're not leaving like this. Not after what you've given. As I walked past the officer, I paused just long enough to say, next time, ask before assuming. Titan gave the faintest growl, low and controlled. The officer didn't move a muscle. And then we stepped through the courthouse doors, finally, with the recognition we'd earned. The marble floors inside the courthouse echoed under our steps. Captain Reyes led the way, pushing through a side door that brought us into a quiet conference room with tinted windows and a round table. Titan stayed close, always watching. Reyes shut the door behind us and turned to me. I've got to ask, what happened out there after the medevac? We lost touch. We heard you were injured. I nodded slowly. Yeah. Took some shrapnel. Spent 3 months in Germany. They gave me the option to retire early, and I took it, mostly for him. I motioned to Titan. They said he wouldn't deploy again, too much trauma. I wasn't leaving him behind. Reyes's voice softened. You did the right thing. He looked down at Titan with deep respect. You both did. There was a pause. Then he said, you know, I'm on the Veterans Advisory Board now. And I've been trying to push new training for local law enforcement. Especially around service animals, PTSD, and, well, cases like yours. But too often, it falls flat. No real stories. No real faces. I raised an eyebrow. You want us to speak? I want people to see the reality. Not just in a classroom slide deck, but here. You, Titan, everything you stand for. I glanced down at my old partner. He tilted his head, calm and steady as always. You think that rookie outside would listen? I asked, dryly. Reyes smiled faintly. He just got a wake-up call. Now I want you to deliver the rest of it. I sat down slowly. All right then. Let's give them the truth they've been ignoring. Titan laid at my feet, still and loyal. He knew, somehow, that what was coming next mattered more than any mission before. Within an hour, Reyes had made a few calls, and suddenly, the atmosphere in the courthouse changed. A conference hall on the second floor was cleared, filled with officers, court staff, and even a few local reporters who caught wind of the sudden, special address. No one really knew what was about to happen. I stood at the front with Titan by my side. The young officer from earlier was seated near the back, sunglasses off, face pale. Captain Reyes introduced me. This is Sergeant Kendra Maddox, he said clearly into the mic. She served with distinction overseas and brought home one of the most decorated military working dogs in recent history. Today, she's here not to relive war stories, but to remind us what it really means to serve, and why assumptions have no place in that uniform. The room fell silent as I stepped up to the podium. I didn't use notes. I didn't need them. I've been stared at before. Doubted. Ignored. You'd think serving 2 tours with the 173rd Airborne would change that, I began. But too often, when I walk through an American city with Titan, people only see a woman and a dog. Not a soldier and her partner. I looked directly at the rookie officer who had tried to push me off courthouse grounds earlier. Earlier today, someone looked me up and down and decided I didn't belong. They didn't ask. They didn't check. They just assumed. A few officers shifted uncomfortably. I placed a small metal box on the podium and opened it, revealing Titan service medals, dog tags, and a photo of our unit, dirt-streaked but proud. This dog saved lives. He held a perimeter under mortar fire when most men would have run. And yet someone called him just a dog. Titan sat calmly, as if he knew every word was for him. My name is Sergeant Kendramatics. And this is Sergeant Titan. We didn't come here to be seen. We came here to be heard. And with that, I stepped back. The room stayed still, no applause, no reaction. Until one person began to rise. The first to rise was an older officer near the front. His uniform bore service pins from over 2 decades ago, Desert Storm, Bosnia, Kosovo. He stood slowly, eyes locked on Titan. He saluted. Without hesitation, I returned it. One by one, more people stood. Veterans in the room recognized the weight of what had been shared. Officers who had dismissed us hours earlier now looked uncomfortable, their faces taut with quiet realization. Even the young cop in the back, who had once barked orders at me, stood up, eyes downcast, shame flickering across his face. Captain Reyes stepped beside me again, voice calm but commanding. We needed this. More than you know. He looked around the room. This department has its flaws. We've made mistakes. But ignoring experience, dismissing service, making snap judgments based on nothing more than appearances, that ends today. There were nods. Real ones. I bent down and unfastened the pouch on Titan's vest, pulling out a worn cloth badge. It had been given to us by our squad's lieutenant after Titan dragged him through rubble in Helmand province. It wasn't official. It wasn't military issued. But it meant everything. I handed it to the officer who had doubted us. He looked at me, stunned. Why are you giving this to me? Because you need a reminder, I said. Not of who I am, but of who you should be. He held it like it was glass. A local reporter in the corner whispered to his cameraman, "Did you get all that?" I didn't care if they did. This wasn't for the cameras. This was for every time someone had judged a warrior by their skin, their silence, or their species. And for every time they wouldn't again. After the crowd dispersed, the young officer lingered near the doorway, still clutching the cloth badge like it might dissolve in his hands. He kept glancing at Titan, as if trying to figure out how he missed it all, what he failed to see in both of us. I walked up to him. Titan followed close, calm and quiet, his eyes never leaving the man who'd once tried to drive us away. The officer straightened, clearly nervous. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "I didn't mean to disrespect you. I thought I was doing my job." I studied his face, reading the tension, the regret. He wasn't defensive anymore, he was raw. Honest. "I know you thought you were," I said. "But doing your job means more than following protocol. It means looking closer. Listening harder. Seeing people." He looked down. "I get that now." Titan stepped forward and sat in front of him. The officer looked surprised. "You've earned a second chance," I said. "And he knows it." Slowly, the officer knelt, not to pet, not to touch, but simply to face Titan on equal ground. Titan didn't move, but he gave a slow blink, a signal of trust. For a war dog who'd learned to sense threat and loyalty faster than most humans ever could, that meant something. "Thank you," the officer said, this time without a trace of ego. I nodded once. "You've got a long road ahead. Don't waste what you learned today." Outside, the sun was starting to dip low behind the buildings. Titan and I stepped into its warmth, walking toward my truck. We didn't need medals or applause. We had something better now, a room that finally listened. The parking lot was quiet now. The earlier tension had evaporated, replaced by a stillness that felt earned. Titan leapt into the passenger seat like he always did, one fluid motion, strong despite the streaks of gray in his muzzle. I slid into the driver's side, resting my hand on the steering wheel, the other on his back. Before I turned the key, I looked at him. He met my eyes like he always did in the field, silent, but ready. "We did good today, partner." He thumped his tail once against the seat. As we pulled out, I saw Captain Reyes outside the courthouse, speaking with a group of officers. A few of them nodded as we passed. Not out of politeness, but out of something deeper. Recognition. Respect. Down the street, the local news station was setting up a segment. I caught a glimpse of the headline on a screen: "Veteran handler and her ward dog spark training reform after courthouse confrontation." I didn't smile. But something in my chest felt lighter. Because this wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about justice. It was about truth. About showing people that valor doesn't always come in a uniform that fits their assumptions. That service can come on four legs and in a voice they almost ignored. And that when you walk in with the truth, and the partner who's fought beside you, no one can dismiss it for long. Titan let out a soft breath and rested his head on my lap as we drove away, his mission never over, his loyalty never fading. And mine. Just getting started. Days later, I was back home, the morning sun cutting through the blinds as Titan lay at my feet, alert but relaxed. He always knew when things had shifted, when the mission had changed. My phone buzzed on the kitchen table. It was a message from Captain Reyes: "They want you back next week. Not for testimony, this time, to lead the seminar." Also, Titan 2. Everyone's asking about him. I stared at the screen for a moment, letting it sink in. The department had officially implemented a new training initiative, now mandatory for all patrol officers: combat acumen, civil recognition, identifying veterans, service animals, and situational awareness. I'd be teaching it. Me. The woman they nearly shoved off the steps just a few days ago. I looked down at Titan. "You ready to train some rookies?" His ears perked up. Across the room, on a shelf we'd never used for trophies, I placed something new: the cloth badge. Not for what it was, but what it now meant. A reminder that legacy isn't carved from medals or headlines. It's built when someone finally understands, and decides to be better. And sometimes, it takes a woman and her ward dog to remind the world who's still standing guard. The day of the seminar arrived. Titan and I pulled up to the precinct just after 0800. This time, there were no sidelong glances. No one questioned why we were there. Officers held the door open. A young cadet even stood at attention as we passed. Inside the training room, every seat was full. Captain Reyes greeted us with a nod. "They've been waiting." I clipped Titan's vest, adjusted my notes, not that I needed them, and walked to the front of the room. Titan sat beside me, his posture perfect, like he knew the gravity of what was about to happen. I scanned the crowd. The young officer who once dismissed us was seated in the front row, hands folded, eyes forward. He looked different now, not just in expression, but in posture. In purpose. I took a deep breath and began. This course isn't about policies or checklists. It's about presence. Awareness. And the cost of assumptions. I paused. You've all trained to identify threats. But today, I want you to learn how to identify service. It doesn't always wear a badge. Or walk on two legs. Titan let out a soft huff, perfectly timed. That earned a few quiet smiles. I continued. Sometimes the people you overlook are the very ones who've held the line for you, long before you ever put on that uniform. We spent the next 2 hours walking through real case studies, Titan's missions, and first-hand stories. I watched as minds opened, as questions deepened. The conversation wasn't about protocol anymore. It was about duty. At the end, Reyes stepped up beside me. Let's give them the honor they deserve, he said. The room stood. Every officer raised their hand in salute, not to me, but to the soldier at my feet. Titan stood and returned the gaze, steady as ever. And in that moment, I realized something: it wasn't about fixing the past. It was about shaping the future, one lesson, one officer, one truth at a time. I knelt beside my partner, whispered into his ear. We did it, boy. His tail thumped once. Mission complete.